Hi, welcome to Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have construction needs? Maybe you need, maybe some Christmas lights over Christmas, or maybe you need a kitchen remodel. Check out K&H Construction. They're a local company. Chris Helms out of Waxahachie. They'll take care of you. Let them know DV LeBron sent you. Today, my very special guest is one of the candidates for the Justice of the Peace Precinct 4, Mr. Mike Jones. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad that you've decided to come on the show and talk to the voters of Ellis County, especially Precinct 4. I look forward to having this interview and having Mr. Butch Bryan on as well, and getting these interviews out for the people. Thank you so. I tell every candidate this. Thank you so much for wanting to continue to serve and serve your community, because I know you've done this before. I mean, in this thing that's Ellis County politics, it can be real rough and tumble and rough sometimes. And putting yourself out there is really rough to serve your community, continue serving your community. Thanks. Thank you for doing that, man.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And you're welcome. And so is everybody else. It's my honor.
So, what made you want to run? I mean, you've done this before. I mean, what makes you want to keep going on this?
And I wish I had a canned answer for you. So this would be my fifth political campaign. I ran 4 times as a constable and served four elected terms there. And while I was serving, I would, I trained Egan, I trained Ponder and McKenna. I trained them in when they came in how to operate in the JP court, because it was foreign territory for them. But for me, it was what I've been doing since 2007 as the constable in that court. So I know the ins and outs of the civil law and the criminal law as it applies to the justice of the peace, and I wouldn't run against anybody for those 4 terms, because I wanted to be the constable. I really enjoyed it. It got to be where being a police officer is a younger man's game, and so
I understand that.
yeah, so the I guess the what would be next would be the justice of the peace. I don't have to run a bad guy down. I don't have to pull over anybody for speeding. I don't have to deal with things like that. I don't have to work nights. I can work days, but I need to be there for the people of this precinct as their experience, so they can have an honest resolution to whatever they're facing. Maybe they're being sued, or maybe they're suing somebody. You want somebody who knows the law. I do. I've got over, 3,000 plus formal training hours, just in that playground, so to speak.
Can you tell me, because I should ask this first, but can you tell me a little bit about you and your background for those that may not know you? Because this county, there's a lot of people moving in, man, and I know
There,
you
there
do
is.
that. So maybe they might not know Mike Jones.
Yeah, you're right, man. This county has grown. When I was first elected as the constable, and then I'll go back and tell you the history of me. But when I was first elected, I think our population was 10,000, 7,000 to 10,000 in
That's
Midlothian. But at the time, my precinct 4, went from Venus to Cedar Hill all the way over to the other side, about halfway past Red Oak, over to Cole Road, and even further on the north side of that. But because of the population that's come in, they've moved Precinct 4 back on the west side of I-35. But saying all that, our population has gone from, in the precinct, I would think it's probably, tripled at least, maybe quadrupled in the last 16 years that I was a constable. So yeah, as you say, a lot of people are not going to know Mike Jones, because I've been retired for a year now. New people have moved in, like yourself. You and I discussed, prior to us starting this, that you moved out here from California and didn't know what a constable was, because, or a JP, because they don't have that in other states. And so you had to brush up and do your research and figure out what that is. So those people probably don't know that there's even a justice of the peace office or a constable's office either. My background, my background comes from when I graduated from high school. I knew since I was 8 years old that I wanted to join the Marine Corps. Didn't know if I was going to make it or not, but I thought I'd give it a shot. You know, it was supposed to be the hardest thing out there, and it turned out that's propaganda more than anything. But I mean, it wasn't a piece of cake, but it was not as hard as people give it.
I don't know. My dad's stories at Paris Island were something else.
I mean, we're gonna tell the stories. We're gonna do the horror stories, so it scares everybody and make us look like we're tough, you know. But for me, I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, you can set your mind to anything and just don't quit. And you know this.
Mhm.
Your dad is the same way. You're not going to quit. And there's a lot of factors that go in on that why you don't quit. You don't want to I mean, I told everybody in high school I was going to go be a Marine. There's no way I was going to quit and go home without being a Marine. So I had to see it through, man. And then it turned out that I was pretty good at it. You know, I was in aviation, so I didn't, it was probably easier on me than it would have been somebody that was in infantry or something like that. But, you know, for aviation, I started out on A4Ms and went to F4s. And from F4s, I was in the very first squadron. We went from F4s to F-18s, very first in the world to have F-18s. And that was in 1982. So I went to McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis.
I was 5, Mike. I was 5.
Yeah, I was 4 or 5 somewhere. So anyway, did that, and you know, we did a lot with F-18, and then got orders eventually out here to NAS Dallas, and they went right back to F4s because the NAS Dallas VMFA 112, the Cowboys were going to get the F-18, and they wanted experienced guys. So the Marine Corps was ordering all a bunch of us F-18 guys into Dallas, and that was in 93, I think, 92, 93. And then we got the F-18. I eventually retired out of JRB as the head of all maintenance in VMFA 112. Yeah, it's called the maintenance chief. There's only one. So I had 144 guys, 12 work centers, billions of dollars worth of budget and airplanes and material. And I mean, our fuel budget, I had to do it all with the best staff in the world, best staffing SEALs in the world. So we won a lot of awards in our squadron. I received the Meritorious Service Medal from the president for leadership. And but I had to do something. They was going to retire. The Marine Corps won't let you stay forever.
No, they won't.
And I miss it, but you grow out of it. It's another young man's game.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, my 10 years in the Navy, and I had this wild dream not too long ago that I was actually on the ship and I was working and I was moving around and doing a thing, but I was who I am right now. Not that guy who was 18 or something, but I was on the USS Pellew and I was this fat old guy and I was just totally trying to keep up with everybody and it was just not working. So yeah, that is definitely a young man's game. It really
It is, man. You know, when I retired, DB, I was 38 years old and I was known as the old man, you know.
That's a thing. Yeah.
You know, so and physically, I mean, I could still hang with the 18-year-old for physical fitness and things like that because we still had to compete. And you know how it is when you had 10 years in the Navy. The Navy didn't care. You're still going to do the same physical fitness as the 18-year-old guy.
You're going to do it.
So I did that, but I knew I was retiring. So 2 years before I retired, Midlothian PD, they offered me a job as a police officer, but I had to go to obviously through the police academy. But I was still the maintenance chief out at JRB in Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
I lived here in Midlothian, so I would go to work, to the Marine Corps at 6:30 in the morning, get off. We call it secure. As you remember, we would get off at 4:30, 16:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would drive out to Weatherford where the police academy was. And I think it started at 6:00 and it went to 9:00 and then drive all the way back to Midlothian.
Oh.
And I did that for 9 months. That police academy was 9 months. And then once I graduated from the police academy, Midlothian, the offer was still good. They hired me as a police officer, but I was still active duty. And so in 1997, Midlothian offered me a full-time police job, even though I still had 2 years left to be on the Marine Corps contract to retire. And I accepted it. And then my command, they told me they wouldn't deploy me, that for 2 years, I could do the Marine Corps in the daytime, and at nighttime I could do the police thing, which I did for 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah, but they still deployed me.
yeah.
So, so I'd have to take and Midlothian PD was awesome, man. They if I deployed, and we deployed outside the continental United States twice during that time, and Midlothian PD, they just held my job until I came back. And so I did both jobs for 2 years. And then once I retired from Marine Corps, then I only had one job, and that was with Midlothian PD. Did that till 2003. Went to work for Ray Stewart was the sheriff. I went to work over at the county as a deputy and did that until 2007, and I was hired by the constable's office here as their chief deputy. And then I ran for constable in 2008, won it, and took office on January 2009. And I kept that office as the elected constable until December of 2024, when I retired from the constable's office. So my whole life has been nothing but service.
I was just thinking that you've spent your life doing service, and now you're putting your hat in the ring again.
Yeah.
Now tell me what people don't know, people that don't know what a JP does. Tell me what is their main primary duties?
Well, the primary duty is the JP court is known as the People's Court here in Texas. And you may have saw that on TV, Judge Wapner, the People's Court, things like that. Well, that's really what the JP Court is. Most people who go to court or need, are sued or they're suing somebody, it's going to be under the $20,000 threshold. And that jurisdiction belongs in the JP Court. So it's a place for normal people that don't get in trouble, and normal people that just, they've done everything right, except maybe their tree fell on somebody's fence and they're getting sued because of it, or something like that. And they don't need a lawyer to represent them. They can come in there and they can talk in layman's terms, and their voice can be heard in front of somebody that knows the law and knows the protocols and knows the procedures to run a courtroom, and they can seek their remedy, and hopefully somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. So hopefully, the bottom line is they can seek their own justice in the JP Court, whereas they're not going to be able to represent themselves in a higher court. They're going to need an attorney, and that could get pretty expensive. So they try to air their grievances in the JP Court. So that's primarily what the JP Court is for.
There's when you're dealing with those kind of cases, things may be, while the law is black and white, some of those things may be a little shades of gray. Tell me what guides you? What is your principles that guide you on those decisions that may be difficult, may fall in those gray areas? Knowing your principles would be important.
Yeah. So what would guide me is, just like it was as a police officer, I don't have a dog in the fight. Party A and Party B, they both have what they think is the right, they think their case is the best case, and the person that's being represented, who's representing themselves on the other side, will think that their case is the right case. I would go strictly by what the law says, and not to be hard, or, with the law says this, y'all do a handshake, you owe him this and next, but to explain to them what the law says. I understand how you feel, but this is how the law is read. And so that's how I would conduct it. I would conduct it strictly by what we're given from the legislator, and we have to stay within that framework. Yeah.
Does the JP have discretion on how they, because you're going to be dealing with, one of the things that you deal with the JP is like maybe evictions. You know, you got, in those cases, I imagine, I've never been there, but I mean, I've been on the other side in other lifetimes when you're going through an eviction and, you know, they're in dire straits and there's a lot of things going on
Yeah.
that you, what are your thoughts on discretion when it comes to those things? Is it just, you know, law, is discretion something that's allowed?
Unfortunately, it depends. Now, this, that's kind of a broad question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Let me try to narrow it down a little bit. So the law is very, very clear that if you have a contract, which hopefully you do, but sometimes they don't have a contract. Somebody allows somebody to live in their garage for 6 months or whatever, and there's no contract involved. So a certain amount of discretion would be be there, but you'll have to drill down deeper to find out the resolution on that. But if it's a contract, if it's a lease and the lease says you can't have a dog and you allow a dog to live in your apartment, just, hypothetically, and that landlord brings you to the court, the justice of the peace doesn't have discretion to say, well, yeah, it's a dog, but it's a little dog, or that dog has been debarked or a cat's been declawed. It doesn't matter. The contract says this, that person signed that contract, and you have to honor that contract in court. But what people don't realize is evictions are solely the jurisdiction of the justice of the peace. In other words, if you live in precinct 4 and your property is in precinct 4, then you have to file eviction in that court. Can't go to precinct 3, can't go to precinct 2, can't go to Dallas. Has to be filed in the court of the precinct of where that property resides. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, those are things that just, it's a very personal part of the job where you got to deal with those things and then still, you know, be, you know, enforce the law,
Yeah.
enforce the law as it's written. Now, one of the things that you're going to be responsible for is the budget. The budget is going to come down from the county, and you're going to get some money, and you're responsible for the citizens, you know, money. So tell
Yeah.
me, how will you work to make the court more efficient and respect taxpayers' money?
That's simple. I've been doing it. I did it for 4 terms as a constable. We're not like the federal government. We can't just print money and just run over a budget.
You're right.
So yeah. It's no different than your own checkbook. If you want to go buy a new computer and you're $500 short, you're just not buying that computer. I mean, that's just the way it is. You use that money maybe to buy food or whatever, but there's no other money coming in. So you have to, and when you're dealing with a county budget, the way I dealt with it, you're looking 5 months, 6 months out. A lot of people that I know, me included, we would kind of hold off on spending money. We would squeak a dollar of the taxpayer money. And then towards the end of the year, towards the end of the budget year, and it's a fiscal year, so it would be over September the 1st or 30th, whatever, how many days. That would be the end of your budget. Your new budget would start the 1st of October. So then we would purchase the paper for the printer. We know how much money we have in the pot, and we would anything we needed far as administrative, paper. We did the same thing in the service, and you did too, probably, DV. You buy your pens and your papers and your bullets and your band-aids and your toilet paper. We had to do all that. And you know how much you use, and the rest of the money you let it go back to the county, back to the general fund. Don't spend every penny. In the military, you'd spend every penny, because if you didn't,
You
you
weren't
know,
going to get that next year.
that's right.
You were going to get next year. It's a very convoluted thing. That's why we're, you know, 30 some odd trillion, almost 40 trillion this way. I
Exactly.
mean, it's just crazy. Now there are things like that can, and I don't know right now the current state or anything like that, but there have been backlogs in the past. How do you handle backlogs and you know make sure that you know you're giving everybody the time and the respect to every single case that comes before you.
Yeah. So that's the $1 million question right there. And you probably didn't even realize it. So that court is, and I'm going to be generous here and say it's 8 years behind. Backlog 8. And I'm being generous. When we moved into that building in 2018, from May of 2018 to today, which is 8 years, there hasn't been any jury trials. Let me preface it by saying there was one jury trial this past year, but it was an eviction jury trial where a person wanted a jury trial to hear his eviction. The current judge didn't hear that case. It was heard by another judge that came over because the current judge and the last two judges didn't have experience in jury trials. So these jury trials haven't been heard in, like I said, the minimum is 8 years. So here we have people, citizens of this precinct, who have paid their money to have their day in court. They've had some kind of issue going on where they want some kind of remedy. They want resolution. They think they were wronged, or somebody wronged them and they're suing them. Those people have paid that money into the court system. And, you know, that old term, justice delayed is justice denied. And this is what's going to make sense. So the witnesses or some of the people that are involved in the cases have moved away, or in some cases they're deceased now. So that person that initially needed a remedy from that court is not going to get that remedy. Because of the court. I don't want to get nasty or dirty about reasons why. All I want to say to the people is Precinct 4, if I'm elected, that's the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to get into those files and we're going to send out subpoenas and we're going to get these cases heard. If not, if for some reason those cases can't be heard because of, no longer are these people able to be found, then I need to get with the DA's office and the commissioner's court and see if we can't get those people's money refunded. But the money that they're out from whatever wrong they perceive, unfortunately, there's not going to be any remedy for that. And I think that's the biggest tragedy. This court is at the minimum 8 years behind. Yet you can go over to Precinct 2 and within 3 months, you can get your case heard. So when you file a case now in Precinct 4 today, the clerks will tell you that it's going to be a minimum of 18 months before your case can be heard. And that's if it's not a jury trial. That is not satisfactory.
Wow.
But it has to do with training. It has to do with experience. It has to do with one judge needs to attend a lot of training. And that's just going to take time. And it's, this current judge inherited a lot of that, but he also doesn't have the experience to go in there and clean that court out. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take years to gain experience to have that kind of court. I can do it, January 1st of 26, when we can go, 2027, and go right in there and start clearing that docket out. And
how will you hold yourself accountable to the voters of Precinct 4 on these things?
I mean, it's going to be, it's like that old monkey, monkey see, monkey do. I mean, it's just going to be where you're going to see the progress, in a judicial sense. It's not like I can beat a drum and say, hey, look what we're doing, in the courtroom. But I think what we need to do is we need to be able to televise, or at least on social media, YouTube, or whatever it takes. We need to televise some of these court hearings for people that are working, can't go to the court.
Yeah, let's go into transparency, Mike. I like that. Let's
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
you want it like every government. I asked just about every candidate about transparency. What does that look like for you?
100%. It looks like that's what we're supposed to do. We're stewards of the people who put us in there. And I just can't imagine not being transparent. I would want to know. I want to know what my taxpayers are money's doing. It's hard. It's hard for me to pay my taxes just like it is everybody else. You know, some people don't think that the JP court should even exist, but I disagree. I think if we could televise it, I think more people would understand, the courses that they have available to them to, again, I'll go back to the tree falling on somebody's fence, or maybe somebody. Here's a prime example, DV, and it's happened in the court where someone has sued a roofer, or at least a guy who said he was a roofer. They paid this guy $7,000 for a roof. That guy orders the shingles get delivered, yet he never shows up. And so normal people would think that's criminal, but the law counts that as civil because he did actually do something with the money. He bought the shingles. So now you got to bring it in civil court. It's under $20,000. So that's going to be heard in the Justice of the Peace Court.
But is that like a small claims court? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You want somebody with experience or somebody that knows the law to hear that case. At least I would.
I can understand that. I can understand. No, I can understand why. I definitely, it's because, when we started off the show, there was, we talked about what people may not know. What's the biggest misconception, would you say, about the JPs and their duties?
The biggest misconception, and it was told to me last year, was you don't need to be qualified to be a justice of the peace. You just need to be an adult over 18 years of age, no felonies, and be able to walk through the door. And that, by the law, that's correct. But you don't want somebody like that to have a hold of your $20,000 purse strings, and try and don't know where to look the law up, to rule in your favor or to rule in somebody else's favor. The biggest misconception is anybody can do it. And I disagree. I don't think just anybody can do it. I think with the right training, the right experience, I think anybody could do it. But just from day one, I just, I've been in there and trained Lewis Ponder is a prime example. Super guy, super smart.
I like Louis.
First day on the bench, his eyes were this big. And that's a guy that can think on his feet. And that's, it's not that simple. It's not hard, but you need to know the law. And it takes years to know the civil law, the property code, the penal code, so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a law enforcement officer and I don't know it all, I don't know it all. I know enough not to get myself in trouble. That's kind of where I stand on that one. But, Mike, why should the voters? This will be the last question for you. Why should the voters trust you to do this?
I'm a proven commodity, DV. I like I said, I've been a police officer for 27 years, elected constable for 16, but prior to that, I was a chief deputy constable. So I've done it right. I've also been through the fire with some shady other politicians in this county, and I held to my guns on that, and I didn't cower down. I'll never do that, and came out the other side, with my integrity, and my moral values still intact.
I'll ask you, and I'm sorry to interrupt on this, but if you're okay, I will ask you, because there has been things online that have been mentioned about things that you went through. If you wanted to address it, that's fine. If you didn't, I'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, Lord, we could take 5 hours and discuss what went on with me, but let's just go right to the end. I wouldn't plea. And I know this is just going to open up more questions for people, but
it always does.
It always does. And I'm an open book, but it's going to take a long time. But just for the sake of this show and everybody else's time, I went before a jury of 12 of my peers, and they told me they found me not guilty. Everything that was told about me, they found as not true, which I wasn't able to wave the flag, because when you're under, when you're under these cases, you have, your lawyers will tell you shut up. They don't want you to say anything. So I was dying to tell my side of the story. Anyway, the jurors found me, everything that was launched against me, as not true. The foreman of the jury, they all wanted to meet with me afterwards, which was incredible. So all 12 jurors met with me and my lawyer afterwards, just to tell them how sorry they were that I had to go through all this. And they told me that the foreman said he was going to go around every juror in that jury room, and just to see where everybody stood. And then at the end, and then they would discuss it or deliberate. He said he went to every juror, and every one of them was not true, not true, not true, not true. He said, so in 5 minutes, they had a verdict, and it took them another 50 minutes to get the form in there for them to even sign it. So it was a unanimous, not true, not guilty, for anything y'all read online. And I have that paper too. So
ultimately, it's when the jury makes that decision, then that's how our justice system works. They say no, you're not guilty, and it's just that's kind of work. But I mean, I don't know the exact story. I just know that there was mention on it online, and I wanted to give you a chance, Mike, to address that, because you know how things get online. They can
I do. Yeah, I want to address it online simply because I know why it's being directed to me. I mean, there's 3 mugshots of me on there that'll never come off of the internet. I've never had a speeding ticket in my life. And the last thing I'll say about that is everybody that was involved in that who came after me is no longer employed in the county. And that's from the DA all the way down. They're not here, and they're not here for a reason. I'm still here.
That sounds like a Marine right there. That sounds like a Marine. I've taken the hill. So,
hey man, if I did something wrong, that was my father's name and my grandfather's name, that I would tarnish, or all the Marines that I served with who looked up to me, and they found out that I was, less than honorable. You know how it just wouldn't be right. And this, I'm only giving one side of the story here. Obviously there was another side, and people will say, well, yeah, he's not telling us everything, but I can't be a police officer. Yeah. I couldn't be a police officer to 2020. So this happened in the disposition of that case was April of 2018. If I would have been found guilty on there was like 8 charges, any of those, I could never be a police officer again. So that shows you that I was found not true, because I retired as a police officer in 2024. I served another 6 years after that.
You just barely retired in 2024?
Yeah, man. December of 2020. Been retired for a year and a month.
Holy crap. Yeah, you wanted to see if you liked it, huh? What was the verdict? You do?
I love it.
Yeah, but it is a young man's game. I mean, I'm getting close to retirement, and I can't wait. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm definitely ready. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last things to say to the voters?
Yeah. What I got to say to them is I'm honorable. I have my integrity. I will fight for you. I will fight for myself. I will damn sure fight for you guys to make sure that anything that you guys have come against you, you will get an honorable, fair shake in the Justice of the Peace Court. For that, you have my word. And my word, I fought for 3 years for my integrity, and I'll never give it away. So that's what I bring to the table.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for wanting to serve your community, and thanks again for coming on the Ellis Talker Show. Can you stick around real quick after the show?
Absolutely. And thank you, DB, and thanks for doing what you do for the entire county, brother.
I appreciate that.